Okay, it looks like I think we have a good number of our attendees logged in, so maybe we can get started. Again, welcome to today's webinar, Sustainability in Data Centers, Risks, Opportunities and Challenges. First of all, I hope everyone's safe and well in this definitely challenging time around the world. And thanks for taking some time out of your day to talk about sustainability, which at the end of the day is really all about business resiliency. So I think it's really great, but also really important that we can set aside some time to talk about some of these impacts and longer term issues that we're all going to be dealing with moving forward. Great. My name's Claire Hobby. I'm from TCO Development. I'd like to welcome you to today's conversation. Some of you may be familiar with TCO Certified, our IT certification. Today we're going to talk about a new category for us and also I'm sure many of you. We're used to dealing with the more desktop personal IT kinds of products, our notebook computers, displays, mobile products, for example. Today we're going to be talking a little bit more about our enterprise landscape, so data centers, which is a new category for our certification. And so today we wanted to just give a very general overview of some of the current topics in sustainability connected to data center hardware, but also explore a little bit about beyond hardware, looking at the whole landscape, outsourcing, for example, and what are some of those sustainability conversations we need to have both internally, but also with our suppliers. So a few of our topics that we will get to today, we want to have a quick look at the data center landscape, what's going on, what does it look like. Then I'll hand over to our panel where we'll be talking a little bit more in depth about some of the actual sustainability hot topics, some of the risks and opportunities that are out there for us to dive into. And is it really all about energy only? Energy is obviously a major topic when it comes to data center efficiency and operation and impact. But we want to also look at the social impacts as well and social responsibility connected to the hardware, for example. We'll look a little bit about some of the work we're doing from TCO Development in our new criteria package for data center equipment. And also finally, have a conversation about what can we do from the procurement side as using organizations, as purchasing organizations to really influence more sustainability around our data center operations. So definitely put your questions in that question field. So I'm delighted to welcome our panel or our fireside chat colleagues today. So I just want to maybe go around the virtual table here and have everyone introduce themselves briefly. As I say, my name's Claire Hobby. I represent our purchaser engagement team here at TCO Development. And moving from the left of my screen, I want to welcome Morton from Aalborg University. Morton, maybe you could introduce yourself with a couple of words.
Yeah, I'm a procurement consultant at Aalborg University and mainly purchasing IT, but also all research equipment and whatever we need.
Thanks, Morton. And moving to the right of my screen, also warm welcome to Eric Paredes from the University of Ghent in Belgium. Welcome, Eric.
Thank you, Claire. I'm Eric. I'm an associate professor at Ghent University. I'm connected to the Department of Political Sciences. And my research is in the field of sustainable development and circular economy. And over the last year, I've been chairing a working group within the university where we are investigating the possibilities of moving towards buying fair and circular ICT in laptops and PCs, but also in the future, perhaps in servers and for data centers.
Thank you, Eric. And finally, introducing our CEO, Søren Enholm. Søren, could you say a couple of words about yourself?
Yes, thank you, Claire. Yes, I've been working with at TCO Development for more than 10 years now, and very much focused on these different sustainability challenges. Before this, I used to work in the IT industry and especially with data center infrastructure, data center products, and the more general issues concerned with that. So I've been in that in this space for more than 10 years.
Thank you, Søren. Great. So welcome to our panel. We'll be hearing from each of you a little bit more in a few minutes. Firstly, I just wanted to, for those of you who are new to who we are at TCO Development, introduce our certification called TCO Certified. Many of you are probably familiar with it. If not, I'll just give you a very brief overview. We are a global sustainability certification exclusively for IT products. We've been doing this for quite a long time, well over 25 years of doing hardware certifications. We're used by IT procurement and the IT industry worldwide as a tool to drive greater sustainability for the IT hardware that we purchase or manufacture if you come from industry. We have a very rigorous and very broad set of sustainability criteria which cover both the environmental sustainability, but also very importantly, social responsibility in the supply chain. Right now, we cover 11 product categories, which includes our data center package we'll be talking a little bit about today. And we have a fairly aggressive development cycle, I would say, for a certification. We each issue a new generation every 3 years. Our current generation is called Generation 8. We are targeted, we're working very hard on Generation 9 right now, which we anticipate will be coming out in a first draft later on this year. So we'll get back to you with details on that. A little bit about what makes us quite unique is our independent system of verification, which happens both before a product is certified, but also after a product is certified. And that happens at the product level, but also in the factories where that product model is made. We also do quite a bit of deep diving with industry, with the brands, with the manufacturers to get a better understanding of the actions they're taking in sustainability connected to the products that they make and that we buy. So we have a very full program of independent verification, and that's really what makes it possible for us to be as ambitious as we are. We have direct access to industry leadership and to the supply chain itself. And enveloping all of this good work is our compliance with ISO 14024 as a Type 1 eco-label and ISO 17025, which covers our verification systems. You can find out all the details about all of this either by contacting us directly or go to tcocertified.com. So with that, let's dive into today's topic. And let's start with a table. Always good to start with a lot of data. But I think what really is interesting about data centers is that the landscape is really changing. If we move from left to right in this table that we see, you know, a traditional view of a data center is that we have it on the premises in our own facility. We house our own servers, if you like, and our operating systems. But then we've got to think about between now and 2025, our data needs are anticipated to increase by about 60%. So if we think about that within a 5-year span, our needs for greater scalability, efficiency, and cost effectiveness are really going to be top of mind. So we're seeing more organizations move towards a combination of outsourcing services, moving more services to the public cloud sphere, just to cope with that need for efficiency and scalability. It's estimated about a third of all data that we generate today passes through the cloud at some point. So these services are very, very important. And sometime this year, I think I'm actually reading the statistic I found here, data center will use about 1/5 of the world's total electricity. So not a shrinking business, we might say. So what I think might be interesting here is to pause a little bit and maybe ask you, Morton and Eric, where are your organizations right now on how you handle data center? Do you have some servers yourselves? Do you outsource some services? What's your current situation? Maybe if we start with you, Morton.
At Aalborg University, we have right now all our data centers are internal. We have not outsourced anything. And there's primarily two reasons for that. One of them is that the bandwidth on the internet is not large enough for high performance computing. So we cannot outsource a lot of our data centers. So we have it we have built our own private cloud to use that. And so we are building more and more data centers. Right now we have 3 data centers. We have planned to build a 4th, and we are also planning our 5th data center.
Mm.
And also another reason is also that if you go to the cloud, we also fear industrial espionage on some of our research. So we don't want that to be in a public cloud.
Right. Eric, do you have any thoughts on where the University of Ghent is in this space? Do you tend to have your own servers? Is there discussions about moving more to the cloud, or would you agree with Morton's assessment? Eric, I'm wondering if you might be on mute. There we go.
Yeah. Okay. So well, I'm not a technical person at the university. So, but as far as I know, most of our servers are internal. So we have our own data center, and most of our services are on our own servers. So, and also in the we now have a new tender where there is a call again for a framework agreement with for 4 years with new providers, and I think most of this is also for our own internal data centers. So I think, I'm not sure, but I think this is probably the case for a lot of universities, that we are still managing our own centers.
Mm. I think that's interesting that you both are from universities. Are there any thoughts around why that might be in a university setting, that you really want that data center to be on site? You mentioned espionage, Morton.
Yeah, that is one of them, but I also think one of the main thing is that the bandwidth for high performance computing is not good enough right now. So you cannot use a cloud, external cloud for high performance computing.
Mm.
There's simply not enough bandwidth on the internet to do that.
Mm.
So we need to have them ourselves.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, but of course, not everybody, not the whole university needs high performance computing. So I think a lot of us just use, I don't know, Word and Mozilla Firefox, or I don't know what. So yeah, that's certainly the case for a lot of researchers that do not everybody needs high performance. So
right. Thank you. Okay, great insights. Thank you both. So I think whether you are preferring to house data center technology on site, or whether you do outsource, there's always hardware involved. And a data center can look very, very different depending on scale and location. From the small server room we see to the left, which might be recognizable for many of us, to some of these very large hyperscale centers like the one we see on the right, which happens to be in Oklahoma here in the United States. And there's hundreds of these hyperscale centers, and some of them include tens of thousands of servers. So there's definitely an increase in the need for the hardware involved. I think as worldwide shipments of servers right now are somewhere around 12 million per year, with about a 5% year-on-year increase in volume. So there's always hardware involved. And like desktop IT, that comes with sustainability concerns of various kinds, both environmental, but also what's happening in the supply chain. So with that, I'd love to hand over to my colleague Søren Enholm to talk a little bit more about those issues. Thanks, Søren.
Yes, thank you. Next slide, please. Yes, so data centers and sustainability. Since I've been working in this space myself for a long time, I know that the main issues that are discussed are really performance, availability, and security. And sustainability is not really there. The guidelines and standards that are used to design and run data centers are focused very much on these three issues: performance, availability, security. And when it comes to sustainability, I would say that the main focus is energy efficiency, and it's a lot about cooling. There are different techniques for that to make that as efficient as possible. And also energy efficiency of the IT products used in the data center. That is, as Claire already mentioned, very important, but there are also other issues. We are already working with these other issues when it comes to office IT products. And this is really what we bring now also into the data center space or data center IT product space. So some of the areas are social issues in the supply chain, both working conditions and human rights. Conflict minerals, these are also used in server products. Hazardous substances likewise. And of course the e-waste, that is really the same. So just for those of you who are not familiar with the manufacturing of IT products, this is a picture of the supply chain of a mouse, a computer mouse. It's a German company, Ghent IT, which has made their business idea to make a fair mouse and to know about the whole supply chain of the mouse, and try to make the especially the working conditions as good as possible. I'm not going to go into the details of this. The reason I use this picture a lot is that it's actually public, so you can get it from their website. Usually these pictures are very, the manufacturers and brand owners, they don't want to be public with this information. They see it as business secrets. But in these global supply chains, lots of the manufacturing is done in low-wage countries, and that's where we see a lot of these both social and environmental challenges. So regarding the manufacturing, we have been working in this area now for more than 10 years, and we see lots of issues concerning working condition. And it's everything from recruiting practices that are not fair to working hours, which is a very difficult challenge to address. So we have seen improvements in the factories that we have been working with during this 10-year period. But we always need to work with this. If we don't have focus on it, we see that the factories often fall back into bad practices. So very important to work with this issue. Also, in many of these manufacturing countries, the environmental legislation is not that rigid. So we also see issues with pollution and emissions, which are also very important to address. And regarding the conflict minerals, it's both a social and environmental issue. So the conflict minerals is especially, probably you know about the Democratic Republic of Congo, DRC. That's the most well-known one, but we also see these issues in other areas in the world. These are some pictures from a gold mine in DRC. As you can see, the mining is not done in a way that we do in the Western world, especially I would like to point out the left picture. This is gold mining, and before, when you mined this gold, you used mercury to get the gold out from the other minerals. Mercury is, of course, very poisonous and bad for the environment. Now, more and more, it's cyanide that is used, which is actually not as bad for the environment, but still is very poisonous. And as you can see, the people working here are not using any protective gear. So this is a very important issue as well to work with. Also, we see lots of e-waste. Of course, from the office IT products, the volumes are much bigger than in the data center space, but also in the data center space, there is a lot of e-waste, this is we need to take care of this as good as possible. Today, this is not really the case. Lots of the materials used in the electronic equipment is not recycled and actually go even to landfill in lots of places in the world. So also lots of the e-waste goes to countries where they are not taken care of in a good manner, not environmental and not socially. This is from the biggest e-waste dump in the world in Ghana, Accra, Ghana. What the persons do here is that they try to get the metals from the products, and especially gold and copper, which they can sell for material reuse. But to get to the gold and copper, they put fire to these IT products, and especially the plastics. They contain lots of hazardous chemicals, which go to which becomes really bad for the environment and also for persons' health. So these are some issues that are really important, we believe, to work with also in the data center space. So that's why we have also decided to move into this space. And if we go more concretely into what we are doing, so we have released certifications for 3 product categories: servers, data storage, and network equipment. And those are the 3 main components used in the data centers. And in a large extent, we have used the same criteria that we use in the office IT space. So there are a number of criteria for the manufacturing and material sourcing phase, a number for the use and hopefully reuse phase, and also a number for the recovery and recycling phase. So we have taken the criteria that we use for the office IT equipment, and we have made some modifications, some adjustments to some of them to fit into the data center IT product categories as well. And over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Søren. And maybe I can jump in with a question to you, following your description. There's always an interesting situation when you develop new criteria that there isn't always certified products right at the beginning when those criteria come out. Could you maybe describe how that whole process works when we launch new categories of criteria?
Yeah, usually we work a lot with our different stakeholders, and usually when we launch new criteria, we already have certified products at launch. But this time, when we moved into a completely new area, we understood that we need to build up the interest and get the different stakeholders on board to get this going. So we decided actually to publish these criteria documents, even though we didn't have any certified products. What really is needed now is to get our different stakeholders. Some of you are, I guess, on this webinar as well, to get you going also in the data center space, and especially to start dialogues with your vendors and the brand owners of the data center equipment, to send a signal to them that this is important for you. So the way it works is that it's actually requirements from purchasers that make the industry start working with this and start certifying the products.
Great, Søren, thanks for that clarification. And we see this even in other categories too, where we have a number of certified products, that it's still important that people in procurement or setting sustainability policy around hardware still put their voice out there and have those conversations with their suppliers to make sure that the message is clear, that sustainability is important, connected to the hardware that we source. And we're very pleased that we can now include data centers in that work. So thinking about that, various stakeholders on the call today and that we all meet with, we got thinking, what are some things that we can do? And we put together some of our thoughts, but I definitely want to bring in the panel today to kind of think about some of these suggestions and how it works in your space. And if we think of this as like a curve or a spectrum, you know, some of us are just starting out thinking about sustainability and data centers, and some of us have come a little bit further along. So I think there's no bad answer here to some of these questions that we're talking about today. But some things you can do as a procuring organization. If we start with the idea of building a team, and this can be around data centers, it can also be around desktop hardware. If we think about how do we talk about sustainability connected to those products, and if we look at data center, if we're procuring our own hardware, we definitely want to make sure we're building a sustainability team internally. And if we're outsourcing, definitely identify someone with your supplier or suppliers who you can have that sustainability conversation with. If I open that up to Morton and Eric here, if you think about sustainability and IT in your own organization, who's in that sustainability conversation? Who's on the team? Who needs to be in there? Maybe Eric?
Okay, I will start. Well, at least for us at Ghent University, for our situation, it's important to see that we have been discussing sustainability since, I think, 2012, 2013, when we started a process which we called Transition of Ghent University, which had the ambition of making the university much more sustainable than it was at the time. And so we started with fields such as energy and mobility and food, but also education and a little bit of research. So in all these areas, we started with plans and small projects and so on around sustainability. And so we've been working on that for 8 years, I think now. And that's in fact that was fertile ground when last year the discussion came up whether we should not also start thinking about sustainability in ICT. So we already had this whole process going on for 8 years, and then last year we decided, well, perhaps we should also see whether we can discuss this within ICT. And so we set up a group with people, of course, from the ICT department, from the central department, but also from more departmental, like ICT people, like from biology, for people that were working in the Department of Biology, for example, were very interested. So we had people from ICT, we had people from our environmental department, with the environmental officer and so on. We had several professors and researchers involved. We also had students involved. And we also had support from an external NGO, the NGO Katapa, who was working on the Make ICT Fair campaign. So the European campaign, Make ICT Fair. So we had a whole group of people that before summer 2019, started thinking about, okay, what can we do with ICT and sustainability at Ghent University? And we were lucky because we were lucky in the sense that around the same time within the ICT department, people started thinking about a new framework agreement for our purchase of ICT. So we have this policy that we have framework agreements with vendors for 4 years. In our case, it's Dell now. That has been our supplier of ICT over the last 4 years. So, but at the moment that we started, they needed to start thinking about a new framework agreement with possible, or with the same firm or with others. And so now, at this moment, we have a tender where there are 2 lots, two parts in the tender, one for PCs and laptops, and one for servers and other equipment for data centers. And in the first one, there is this quality criteria which says that everything that we want to buy there needs a TCO certified label. So this means that within the next 4 years, for all our laptops and PCs, there's a requirement for the new vendor that they should be able to give us TCO certified products. And then there's a second part, which is on data centers and servers. And there we had to stick with the, let's say, the normal procedure of the past, because there were not yet any TCO certified products at the moment when we launched the tender last month in March. But I think we would obviously be interested, and I think for me there's no fundamental difference between PCs and laptops on the one hand and equipment for data centers on the other hand. You know, there's the same problem of labor conditions, environmental conditions. So I think what you are setting up now with these new certification processes for data centers, I think this is a very good initiative, because we would certainly, I'm almost certain that we would have participated in that for our tender if it would have been available a month earlier.
Yeah, timing is everything,
But,
right?
yeah,
And
but we, you know, we intend to set up a constant dialogue in the future. So yeah.
Yeah, we have this conversation often, that dialogue with the suppliers early and often is so important, to just start sending those signals as to what's important in your sustainable procurement strategy, and allowing them time to prepare for those requests and to get certified product. But we're glad that you're able to make use of TCO Certified for your existing categories, Eric. And on that question of the team, it sounds like getting multiple stakeholders to the table is very important in the planning stages. Morton, I'm wondering if you have a similar approach in Aarhus, or what's your take
No,
on?
yeah, in some ways, in some ways, we are at another place on the curve. We are just beginning to do things within this area. We have done a lot of things already, but it has not been a coordinated strategy. So we have had a lot of in our procurement, a lot of goals regarding workforce and their rights and child labor and so on, and also environment, but it has not been a coordinated strategy. But our management team is right now making a new strategy for the next 4 years, and it will be focusing on how to implement UN's sustainability goals. So it will run all aspects of the university life for at least the next 4 years, and probably also longer. So sustainability will be a great issue also in data centers. But right now, it's more about efficiency and power. How much data can I get from my money? But I think just to add to Eric, you also need on the team the finance department, because in all this sustainability is also a question: how much more are you willing to pay for having sustainable products? Just to get an example, Aalborg University is right now buying all our energy from sustainable windmills, and it costs us around 300,000 Danish krones more to get a certificate stating that all our energy comes from windmills. And it is something you also will see in the ICT products. When you move into a new area, then it will be a bit more expensive to start using sustainable products until the industry has made it a industry standard.
So I think that's a really interesting viewpoint, and if we just looking at the slide here, where there's a point about vendor dialogue, and we keep coming back to that, and the idea of power sources and energy sources, is that something that either of you experience when talking to your suppliers? We see that a lot in data center, that's a question that comes up when you're talking to a supplier about their sustainability strategy and whether it's in sync with your own. How much does the idea of energy source and renewable energy come up in those conversations?
Right now, I think it's hard to have this vendor talks, because all there's 4 or 5 big producers of ICT equipment in the world, and all their production is made from sub-suppliers in China. And we all know that it's probably not produced in the best way. So I can see that we can use the TCO certificate here for you to go down and check how it's produced at the sub-suppliers in China, because we cannot do it ourselves.
Mm.
Well, as I said earlier, I'm not on the technical side, but from what I hear from the technical people and from the ICT people is that until now, if there have been criteria for sustainability, it has been either on the side of energy, like for example, working with the Energy Star label, or on the side of packaging or something like that, like no unnecessary packaging or central delivery, so that you have not too many mobility issues. These things have been discussed. And for us, it's now for the first time that we go further. So the fact that our board has now taken the decision to work with TCO Certified label for PCs and laptops is really a major decision for us. So that's really yeah, a new policy. And the board has not only decided to work with the TCO Certified label for PCs and laptops, but it has also decided that we are going to set up this dialogue in the future. So until now, we did not have a dialogue about human rights, or, well, when it was about sustainability, it was a little bit about energy and the Energy Star label and so on. But we are going to set, the board has now decided that we are also going to set up a dialogue in the future about environmental issues and human rights issues. So the new supplier, so we will have a new supplier by the summer for our PCs and laptops and data centers. The new supplier will have to get used to that we are going to set up a permanent dialogue with them in the future.
Mm.
But that's the first time that we are going to do that.
Yeah,
I
it's
have no
incredibly.
experience yet.
Yeah, no, it's an important step and not always the easiest step to take. I want to build a little bit further on a couple of points you made about supply chain and social responsibility, and ask you, Søren, and I'm just going into our questions field in the control panel. We're starting to get a few questions, so let's dive in there. We only have a few minutes left. Søren, a question came in: how do you audit the supply chain, or how can we really know that there isn't child labor or unfair labor practices in the supply chain connected to these products?
Yes, so as I think all of you that know how it works understands that it is impossible to guarantee that it doesn't happen. The main focus here should be to have a system in place to detect if there are any problems in the supply chain, and also that system should make sure that problems are addressed. So it's working with the supply chain. It's more like a management system approach. There will be problems if an auditor goes to a factory and doesn't find any problems, then the auditor didn't do his or her job, to be honest. And that is even the case if an auditor goes to a factory anywhere in the world, in US or in Europe or anywhere. You will find problems, but you need to address them. And that's how we have built the system with TCO Certified as well. Continuous monitoring and addressing the problems that are found.
Thanks, Søren. And we're getting a few questions here about when we think the first certified data center products will be available. Do we have any early signals on that yet?
No, I can't say that we have any signals about that. We have had lots of dialogues with the industry, the data center IT product vendors. So they know about what we have done. And they've had also lots of comments, so to make sure that the criteria are in line what is possible to do. But they will need to see requirements or demand from purchasers to do the required investments to certify the products. And it's not only about certifying. First, you have to make sure to fulfill the criteria, of course, and that's the main investment for them to make. So they need to see requirements from purchasers to do this.
Thanks, Søren.
Can
Great, we've
I
got some
ask you a
questions.
question?
Sorry, go on, Eric. Yeah.
Can I ask a question, Søren? What does that mean that from now on we have to contact these huge companies and say in the future we want certified products for data center, or
Yeah, that there are lots of different ways you can do this, but of course a dialogue with the vendor somehow, either if you have direct contact with the big brand owners yourself, this is something that you can tell them, and if you have dialogues with resellers, of course you can also tell them and tell them to send a message to the brand owners. So that's one way of doing it, and if you already have vendor dialogues, that's should be a quite easy thing to do. Of course, it's also possible to use purchasing documents here. I mean, you could use award criteria or other things, other similar things to send the signal that is more, what should we say, more clear signal that the vendors would listen more to if it's only in a dialogue. But of course, that's a little more investment for you to do when you do your purchasing. But really, that sends a stronger signal for sure.
Thanks, Søren.
I also have a question, Søren.
Yeah.
How long time does it take to certify a product if they fulfill the requirements?
That's a quite quick process. So usually it takes a couple of weeks if you're used to working with us. If you're new to working with us and you need to learn, maybe a little longer, but it should not take more than a few months, the longest. But usually we work with different verifiers, these companies that do tests and audits and so on, and we and they can also support the vendors that want to go ahead and certify. So usually it's a quite quick process. And when we see the office IT products now, usually it's something that takes around 2 weeks. A product is sent to a verifier that do testing and so on, and then all documentation and test reports and everything, they are sent to us, and we guarantee 1 week certification, but usually we do it within 24 hours. So it's a fairly quick process.
Thank you, Søren. I'm seeing we've got some great questions coming in and a few minutes left, so I want to make sure we get to some of your questions here. If we don't get to your question today, we'll be happy to answer that offline, so you get an answer to your questions directly. Getting a few questions here about metrics, particularly connected to data centers and how we measure sustainability, either through our own data centers or if we're having a dialogue about outsourcing. Anyone on the panel would like to dive in here? One question specifically, was it analysed at the university level whether a large data center is effectively better or not in terms of sustainability? And how do you measure data center sustainability? Are we looking at CO2 consumption, emissions? What are the metrics that you think about?
Well,
Any volunteers?
We are not measuring at the moment sustainability of our data centers. So of course there are discussions about making them more energy efficient. There's also a discussion going on about how much data storage we need, in fact, because we're storing more and more data. So how much do we need and how much energy does this cost? But yeah, there's now the deep discussion going on at the moment about that. So we're for our data centers, we're at the early stage there.
Okay. Any other thoughts on metrics? No. Interesting question here about the difference between buying your own equipment and buying a service from a data center is that you can't make the same demands or have the same influence in a data center, since your business may only be a small part of that whole data center operation. Are there any thoughts on how to effectively address that, have some influence, even if you're buying buying a service rather than hardware?
I think it's possible to do that, because right now, if you're doing a tender regarding outsourcing of data service, you will probably have some security rules that they should be NATO certified or something like that, and many can fulfill that, and you could also make a quality demand stating that you want them to be TCO certified on the equipment, and the energy that they consume should be from sustainable sources and so on. So I think you can do that, but right now you will probably not get many offers where they can fulfill all your wishes. But if we all make those requirements, then in time they will be able to do so.
Thank you, Morton. Just looking through a couple more questions. I think we have a couple more minutes. Couple of questions about, and probably for you, Søren. How are we considering end of life as part of TCO Certified in this case? Things like ease of repair or reuse, recycling, those kinds of issues. How are they factored into the certification?
Well, I'm not sure if a few minutes is enough to go into that. That's really what our criteria are about. But yes, that's definitely a focus for us. We are working a lot on criteria to push for longer life length of the product, and also that the brand owners take responsibility at end of life. But I think maybe we could get back to a more thorough answer after the webinar offline. I think is better to go into the details.
Yeah, a big question for a 30-second answer. But I think that might be a good question actually for Eric and Morton. How do you typically handle your end-of-life IT products in general so that they don't become e-waste? Any good advice there for our attendees?
It's a very, we're trying to get a view on that at the moment. So it's a very complicated situation for the whole of the university. So we have more than 10,000 people there, or 20, I think. So that's very complicated. And it's, in fact, you have to make a difference between the inflow of ICT products, what we've been discussing most of the time until now. Then there's, of course, the use on the campus itself and trying to extend the lifetime of use by upgrading of products or by refurbishment of products. And then you have the outflow of all these ICT products. So there are some procedures in place at the moment for doing that. It's a very diffuse picture. That's something we have realized over the last few months, that in fact nobody really knows very good how it works. So you have all different procedures going on, and the result is that you have laptops stored in cellars, and others just bring them to recycling parks. And so it's a very diffuse kind of picture. We hope that we will be able over the next few months and probably years to work towards a more consistent policy on that. But at the moment, it's
Thanks, Eric. Morten, any quick thoughts in our remaining seconds?
Yeah. Right now we are paying a Danish company to decommission our IT equipment here in Denmark. But at our last tender, we had a dialogue with all the main manufacturers: HP, Dell, Lenovo, and they all said, and we have put it in as a requirement in our tender, that all our old equipment, they should buy it back and reuse it. And they actually use it now to show that they are more sustainable. So they take back our old equipment today and reuse it in an environmental safe way and use it for their own promotion.
Interesting. Thank you, Morten. Great. Well, with that, we are at the hour, and what a great conversation. I know we could sit for much longer and talk about a lot of these interesting details and strategies moving forward. Before we leave you back to your day today, I just want to recommend that you visit tcocertified.com. You can find our complete criteria documents. You can get in touch with Søren, myself, get support for those vendor dialogues or setting your strategy and criteria moving forward as part of your IT procurement. You can also look at our webinars on demand. I know we didn't get to everybody's questions today, but we'd be more than happy to answer them offline. And look forward to seeing you all soon. Thank you, panelists, for joining us today for a great conversation. Stay well, everybody, and stay connected. Bye-bye. Thanks for today.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye.